Hello class. Last time I went over why SPSS, and now I'm going to try to show you how to use SPSS. So that I'm opening, I'm going to give you instructions on how to get this software separately. So there's a link that you will get from IT, and it should allow you to download the app both for Mac or PC, and then allow you to run the analyses that you need to run. I'm also going to give you the SPSS database, which was actually collected in 2016 by the 405 students. So you only did like 5 properties each, but they did all 268 properties. And I cleaned up this data and it's ready to go for you to analyze. So I will give you the data set and I will show you how to get the link from IT, and then you'll be able to run these analyses yourselves. Before I start, I just want to also say that another thing that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to try to do this on Safari right now, but it may or may not work, is eventually I'm also going to share with you the survey sites that were surveyed by all the students. Let's see if it opens up. My internet connection in my office at home is unfortunately very, very slow. But anyway, all the information that you collected on the survey site, that's also going to be made public for you to use. And as soon as you're done surveying and have handed in that assignment, you're going to have access to all that information. So although on SPSS itself, only a few pieces of information are listed, right? The address and how many buildings are on the site, what are the use of the site, the style, that kind of stuff. On the survey site, there's also things like the photo and the site sketch and all the details. All that stuff will also be available for you to look at. And this is still loading, so we're just going to give it a minute. But in order to find properties, what you're probably going to want to do instead of using street addresses is using the site number. So each property has a unique site number identifier that will make it a lot easier for you to find properties as you go. So just heads up on that. Well, it's still loading, so we're just going to keep going with the SPSS. You'll also note that, as I've mentioned before, you've got the data view and then the variable view. The variable view gives you the information about what kind of data, right? It's metadata, data about the data. So whether any kind of variable is numeric or string, which means text, how many characters it has, if it has value labels, if there's missing data, that kind of thing. The standard for discussing missing data is to give it the number 99, by the way. Right now, this is password protected. It won't be password protected once we get to the next stage. It's just right now you shouldn't be looking at this because you're still collecting data, right? So here are all the properties that people collected back in 2016, and you'll notice that for all of them, it's got all the information that you need, including the sketch, the photo, everything. So this will be made available to you as soon as this first assignment is complete and handed in. All right, this is taking forever to load. All right, here we go. So you can see all the information is there for you to take a look at. All right, I'm going to quit Safari and go back to SPSS now. So what I'm going to show you mainly today is how to run these analyses in SPSS. And you're actually not doing a whole lot here in SPSS, but I want to go over what SPSS can do really briefly. And in particular by showing you how the data would be really not great if you didn't kind of work with these data a little bit, clean it up. So in particular, when you got the date, you got it as a specific date, right? 4-digit specific date, which is great, except as I mentioned in my previous lecture, if you have years where someone didn't build anything, then that would not show up. And instead, it would create this kind of weird impression that there were years where things didn't happen, even if, let's say, in the 1950s, things were built a lot, but maybe they weren't built in like 1 year in the 50s. So one thing that you can do is calculate the data based on the date and to create a decade, which I've actually already done for you. But to do that, you can transform and recode into variables really easily in SPSS. So if you ever do this, which is worth learning how to do, but if you ever do this, make sure to always recode into a different variable. Try not to overwrite data. Overwriting data is dangerous because then you risk losing important information, and you really don't want to do that. Again, though, I'm not asking you to manipulate any data in SPSS this time around. If you're interested in learning more about SPSS, this is fantastic software. It really allows you to do quantitative analysis in a way that Excel kind of doesn't. So what we're going to do right now is run frequencies. That's the big analysis that we're going to do first. So if you go into Analyze and Descriptive Statistics, the first thing is frequencies. And then you can select what you want to run as frequencies, and we're actually going to run just about everything. I'm going to highlight everything. And then you can select different things, like, for instance, mean, median, and mode. You should all know what those things are. You could look at other things like range if you want, or variance, but I don't think we need the rest. You can also create charts. I'm going to show you the charts just so you can see for yourself. And you can select whether you want the chart value to be frequencies or percentages, right? So frequencies is the actual number, and percentages is, well, percentages. So we're going to run this format. That's fine. Okay. And we're going to hit OK. And it's going to run the analysis. And you'll notice it doesn't do that in the other window. It actually creates another window called output. And that's where all of this information is going to go. So it's going to show us that there's 268 properties here. And it's run all these things. And notice that it's got the mean, median, and mode for all the quantitative categories, but not the string, because you can't run mean, median, and mode for string. And then there's frequency tables. So how many buildings are in any given property? Again, remember, you only want the valid percent. Although in our case, I think I got rid of all the missing stuff. But most buildings, just over half of buildings in our neighborhood have 2 buildings, or 2 structures, I should say, on the property. Current use, historic use, secondary use, etc. So I've just run all of these. Here we have all the years where things were built, and here's the decades. Our neighborhood wasn't developed until 1940, so there's nothing to write before then. Styles, eligibility, condition. And here you can see the charts. So number of buildings, historic use, secondary use. Here's the decade. And if you compare that to the date, this is really nice because it shows you how, with the date, right, notice nothing was built between 1979 and 1984. So this kind of gives you the wrong impression because it just falls out since there's nothing there, right? Whereas this gives you a better idea of how this neighborhood was actually developed. The various styles, the eligibility, and condition. All right. The other thing that is worth running is called crosstabs. So what crosstabs allow you to do is, if you go into Analyze again, Descriptive Statistics, and crosstabs, what crosstabs allow you to do is to compare one thing to another thing. So for instance, current use to historic use. So if you hit OK, this will show you how current use compares to historic use. And what you can see here is that almost every number other than on the diagonal is 0. What it means is there's been basically no adaptive reuse in this neighborhood, right? Everything, more or less, that was built for one use has still been used for that use, with the very small exception that a few single-family homes have been reused as multifamily, and that's it. But you can run this for all sorts of other stuff. So let's see. Oh, here we go. Back to here. Analyze, descriptives. Oops, come on. Crosstabs. So another thing that you could do, for instance, is look at, let's say, maybe condition and the decade that it was built. Maybe that's associated. I don't know. I will let you figure out whether those things are associated or not. Or you could also run, let's see, let's go back to this again, analyze, whoops, crosstabs. Maybe the style, where's this style? Style is associated with the number of buildings on the property. I don't know. So you're going to want to run these and try to interpret them. Now, I will tell you right now, you cannot use crosstabs as the direct basis for a chart or map. You're going to want to play with it a little bit more to make it more legible, okay? But this is a really good start to figure out, is there something to say about this? Is there something relevant? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And you may want to just, for instance, narrow down on a single style or a single decade in your analysis. So if you want to do that, what you can do is called select, which is this button right here, right? Select cases. And you could say, I want to select cases, but only if it's built in the 50s maybe, right? So if decade equals 1950, boom, like that. And notice it selected them. Can you all see that? Hopefully, right? So it's only doing the analysis for the 1950s now. And now maybe you can ask and find out, like, I don't know, how many garages did they all have? I don't know. So let's find out. So number of buildings. And maybe style too. Let's find out what, you know what, let's find out all of these. And it'll tell you, so there's 213 that were built in the 50s. And let's see, how many of them were ranch versus minimal traditional versus the others. Yeah, and how many of them are in any given condition, etc. So you can select, and then if you don't want to, I'm completing this right now, reminder. You can unselect then afterwards when you're done. Boom, see the selection button came off, and then run more stuff, okay? So you can run lots and lots of analyses, figure out what's relevant, what's not. The hard part here, honestly, is deciding this is relevant and this is not. So please understand that you cannot write up everything that you ran. You have to decide what is relevant, what's not relevant, and why. All right, so please, please, please take your time with that. So run tons of analyses, talk about them with your team, and then and only then do you decide, okay, this is worth writing about, talking about, and this isn't. Some of these data are going to be better shown geographically on a map, and some of these are going to be better shown graphically on a chart. So deciding which is going to require you to really, again, make decisions about what you're trying to say in your analysis and what makes the most sense. This is where I must also warn you that SPSS, while it's fantastic at running analyses, is terrible at looking pretty. See, these are not good. You can sort of kind of edit them in SPSS, but like seriously, that's not going to work. So once you're done running your analyses in here, you're going to save your output. So hit save. Your output by default is going to be called output and then a number. Please save them as something else because otherwise they're going to be very hard to read, right? So you might want to do it by date, maybe. Output And let's see, today is September 20th, 9/20. It doesn't matter how you do it, but you got to give it a name so that you don't mess it up over time. You can save it in different formats, but for now, we're just going to save it this way. Hit save. All right. And then once you're done with that, once you've saved it, you can talk about it with each other. And then you need to make it look pretty. As I mentioned, you'll need to do that with maps. And I'll teach you how to do that in Photoshop next week. And you can also do that in charts. And to do that in charts effectively, that's when you're going to want to switch back to Excel. So that's what I'm going to show you next, but I'm going to show you that in a separate tutorial so as to not muddy the waters. All right, when you run these, let me know if you find any issues, but this is very, very straightforward analysis. I don't think you should have any trouble. But again, these are good skills to learn. And with that, I will let you go for right now. And I'm going to stop this recording.